swear I can't believe it sometimes. The best thing I do as an English teacher is work with people from all over the world, whether in Korea, Angola, Peru, or Egypt. I get to meet all these students. But some people don't even get how cool an experience that is, even when it's right there in their laps. Today, I wish to speak on the topic of infusion. I'll spend some time trying to define what I think it is, and I'll argue, using personal examples from language instruction, that infusion is not in the best interest of our English teaching profession. And I'll ask you to consider some questions. I might even ask you to write down a couple of things. To understand today's issue of infusion, we're first going to have to note 4 language skills, basic to any language teaching. They are speaking, the skill of talking and making yourself understood; listening, the skill of drawing messages out from what other people say; reading, the skill of guessing messages from what other people write, and this, by the way, is the topic with which we politically are mixing our T-salt apples and political oranges; and finally, writing, the skill of putting messages down on paper or a computer for the others to read. These are what we're going to concentrate on and call the 4 skills. And it's important because we've got this mantra: if you can speak it, you can teach it. Some people might even find an infusion to be some sort of tea. Certainly this is the case in France, where we infuse flavors of Italian syrup with lovely cups of tea for a yummy and satisfying treat. Might even try this recipe someday. Hey, you can even try it in both languages. But in Florida, it's a different story. In this part of the world where we infuse sunshine with the water and mystique of beach and ocean, we have the 1990 Florida Consent Decree. Here we determine that any teacher with a student who doesn't speak English should have professional development in 5 areas to receive an endorsement, certificate, or licensure. These are applied linguistics, cross-cultural studies, methods of TESOL, curriculum development, and assessment. A pretty well-rounded set of items, don't you think? And you'll see that these 5 requirements are not really too different from the standard domains described by the TESOL Program Review Standards as deemed by the National Council on the Accreditation of Teacher Education. At my institution, Florida International University, here in Miami, we had fun during those initial days of the Florida Consent Decree. Students took these 5 courses, and those doing all of them at the master's level found themselves at almost a halfway point of a master's degree when they were all finished with them. Certainly something to be proud of there. However, in 1998, the Florida Department of Education proclaimed a plan to have as many teachers as possible in elementary education, special education, and English education leave their programs with an endorsement in teaching English to new learners. However, they added one conundrum. All these programs had to fit their entire programs into a mold of 120 credit hours, or at least something as close to that figure as possible. The idea then was to infuse. You know, it's nice that they infuse everything with TESOL, but isn't it odd that there isn't any consideration for the other way around? TESOL in elementary ed? TESOL infused with special ed? TESOL in English ed? Actually, we offer those courses in our programs, and they're called electives. Here's how infusion works. First, find a set of competencies. Your state might have a list. Then, find a set of courses. Your program should have that list. Place both of those lists on X and Y axes. Then identify which competencies could possibly fall in any of the classes you offer in those non-TESOL programs. Then, for at least some legitimacy, have 2 or 3 courses that are taught by TESOL faculty placed in your new program. For good measure, be sure as many competencies get covered in those classes as possible. But don't be surprised if TESOL faculty then decide to do their best to address all of them. Then, add up all your competencies. If each competency shows up 3 times in your program, then you have a successfully infused program. Here's the deal, though, and here's the crux of my argument. This program will now have 10 to 17% of all coursework, involving about 34% of all the competencies, taught by the only people who will have a credential higher than the credential the graduates will end up with. Yes, the graduates will have stronger credentials than their teachers. Clearly, of course, this is because if you can speak English, you can then teach it, right? Well, that's what Senate Bill 2512 and House Bill 1219 say. This bill would reduce the number of training hours those who already have an endorsement in reading from 300 to 60. In other words, they will still receive the legitimacy for teaching English learners, but they only need to take 1 course beyond their reading endorsement rather than 5, a reduction by 80%. How did this happen? Well, in March 2007, the Florida Department of Education gathered a number of reading people and some ESOL people and did what's called a crosswalk. This is pretty much a room full of people looking at a Venn diagram. Together, they decided that of the 300 hours required by ESOL, reading contributed 73 of them to the ESOL endorsement. This is similar to a prior crosswalk experience, affectionately known as RESOL, which turned into a means for state-approved certification in both areas, in which ESOL was shown to contribute 80 hours to a reading endorsement. But these bills legislate that not 73, not 80, but 240 of those hours are then found to be common. But what's more is that it's only a one-way legislation. This only applies to reading endorsed teachers. There isn't any reference to ESOL teachers, who would have to undergo 5 courses should they want a reading endorsement. And ESOL teachers are actually okay with that. It is that carving into the credential, the ESOL credential, on top of a reading endorsement that has many English teachers in Florida up in arms. So, if you can absorb all that, Ponce el Leon, that's Ponce, and I've got a couple of questions for you. Actually, a couple, but we'll deal, right? First, even if we cover all of our competencies and place all the X's in the boxes and actually do what we say we'll do we do it in the way that our colleagues say we would? You don't think so? Do we honor our colleagues who have the master's degree, the research, the knowledge, and the experience? Is it the same? And does our research matter anymore? After all, administrators and politicians are making those decisions for us, aren't they? And does your work matter if someone else takes it over? Well, those are some ideas that we're going to investigate here in the next few blogs over the next few weeks. And I really appreciate you joining us. Thanks. Bye.